Hello everybody, Devin Dean here with the Rogue Deck Chronicles, and today we are going over a set review of the upcoming Pokemon TCG set, Pitch Black. The set will go live on July 17th. It will be legal for the world format, and this set has has over 115 cards. It has more new Mega EXs. It has more than 20 new trainer cards, and a lot of really good potential coming from this set. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into this set and give a review of all the cards we think are going to be of importance or of impact of any degree. As always, let's go over what we're looking at when we're talking about a card. So when we look at a card, we are going to give a card a rating between 1 and 4. And that rating is what we would say you should have in your collection or in a typical deck when you are building around this card. So all because a card is a 4 doesn't mean we think it's going to be meta defining, but it's a card that if you are going to be building a deck with it, we think you need to have a 4 of when you are building your standard skeleton lists. Now, with that being said, also, if we give a card a 1, it doesn't mean we think it's not impactful in any way, shape, or form, because there are a lot of really good cards out there that you're only putting a 1 or 2 of in a deck that's going to impact the metagame in a very, very drastic way. So don't get confused on our rating system. It is a deck building suggestion more than a power scale, but it also is a way for you to look at it from a buying perspective, that we think that you should have between 1 and 4 of these in your collection when you are looking at different decks you want to play around with when you're coming to go into League Night or even preparing for a event in the upcoming seasons. With that being said, let's jump into the cards to see what we're getting out of Pitch Black and really kind of get an idea of what this new format's going to be like. So we are going to go in order of the set. So we're going to start off with the grass type Pokemon. And the first grass type Pokemon we're going to talk about today is Lurantis EX. Lurantis EX is a stage 1 EX grass Pokemon with 260 HP. And we're going to talk about its first attack, Lively Cutter. It does 60 damage, and it does another 200 more damage if this Pokemon was healed during the turn. Now, 260 for 1 energy is phenomenal, but we also have to keep in mind that that condition of the additional 200 damage is if it's been healed during the turn. Now, we have to make sure that it's healed, not moving a damage counter, so you can't pair this with a Monkey Dory because the moving off of damage counters is not technically a heal. But what you can do is pair it with a Monkey Dory to put damage counters onto it and then heal it. And then in the format right now, there's plenty of healing options. We're talking about Potion, Super Potion, Arvin Sandwich, Luminous Skelette, just from the item side. And then we have a couple of healing supporters as well that we could use, like Pokemon Center Lady. We could use AZ since it is an EX Pokemon. Stuff like that. But again, this is all based on if your opponent or if you can get damage onto it, that you can heal it. There's been some lists out there that has partnered the Lurantis with the Meganium and Hydrapple, because Hydrapple's ability will allow it to heal for a single attachment, and then you're doubling energy with the Meganium. So that single energy for Lively Cutter could be used for Leaf Guard, which is its second attack for Grass and Colorless. It does 140, and then you take 50 less damage from attacks the next turn. So just in case maybe you can't get a heal off, at least you're doing a little more damage. So Lurantis has been seen some play in Japan. It's really just a interesting way of going about healing, and then just kind of figuring out how you can get the healing shenanigans to happen, because your opponent can just straight up either gust around it or just not attack into it. So that's Lurantis. And then honestly, out of the rating system here, for Lurantis, it's maybe a 2 at most. You're not really going to build a 3-3 or 4-4 line in a deck. purely because of its attack costs in terms of what it needs to be done. It's a cheap low to energy attacker, but it needs so much for it to maximize its potential. So for Lurantis EX, we're going to go with a 2 rating, and that for you to get a 2/2 line in your binder and kind of see if you want to play around with more grass decks. Grass has a lot of support right now. So being a grass type is not a bad thing for Lurantis at this moment.
Okay, y'all, we're going into the fire Pokemon here. And really, the only one I want to talk about is the new Armarouge from this set. So, this is a stage 1, evolves from the Charcadet, which, I'm not too fond of this one, but the Armarouge is pretty good. So, it has one attack for one fire energy called Flame Legion. Does 40 base, and then we do 40 more damage for each bench Pokemon that has fire energy attached. I actually think this is going to be a pretty good single prize option in some fire decks, especially if you run with the Oricorio EX with the either Mega Charizard or even with Mega Camerupt or one of the Mega Fire Pokemon. You can get energy down onto board that way. Put in, say, maybe a Mega Terra as well. And actually, you don't even need a Terra Pokemon to be fire type, so you can play Rapgos or something else. As long as you have a Mega to proc the Oricorio and put fire energy and spread it out on your board, you can do 320 damage that way. So I think this is actually a pretty decent attacker in a deck like that. Again, I'm not going to be too high on this card, but I think maybe a 1 or 2 for my ranking on this. I can see this be a nice utility role, just offset prize trade. And then if you play GLC, I think this is a good option as well. It's something very easy to put down, very easy to get energy in play. So my final decision, I'm going to rank this a 2 out of 4 for this Armarouge here. The other fire type Pokemon in this set, there's nothing too spectacular about them. So unfortunately, I'm just don't even think it's worth talking about when it comes to Pitch Black. Hopefully the next set will have more fire Pokemon that we can talk about. But right now, I think the Armarouge is the fire card that you would want to go after in this set.
Next up, we're going to go into the water types. Now, the water type Pokemon did get a boost with the Misty Energy Supporter, which does allow an acceleration of 4 water energy at the cost of ending your turn. But it allows to open up a lot of really good potential for water types, especially from this set, and obviously older water types as well. The first one we want to talk about is the Seaking with the Hydro Jet attack. It is for triple colorless, but for every water energy attached to this Pokemon, you do 30 more damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So it's a up to minimum 90 snipe anywhere you want. Now, the Seaking does get turned off by Terra Pokemon and by the Shaman if you're attacking into non-rule box. So that's something to take in mind when you are putting this together. In terms of stage 1 Hydro Pump-like attacks, I think Seaking does get outclassed by the Baby Wailord from before, where it's actually a Hydro Pumper, and then that Wailord does get buffed up with the fact that there is another Wailord coming. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the Seaking is an interesting piece where you can probably put a 1/1 in a Hydro Pump style deck to kind of just finish off KOs if you're able to. Now, in terms of the rating for this card, I'm going to give it a 1. It really isn't much more than a tech attacking option in any deck that I can really come up with, just because I think there's better Hydro Pumpers in the format that will allow us to do what we need to do, but the Seaking being able to put it wherever you want does give it some flexibility. Now, the big water Pokemon for this set is the big boy Wailord EX. Wailord EX is a stage 1 EX Pokemon with a massive 380 HP. And it has 2 attacks. One is Surf for 3 water energy, does 120. The other one is Falling Down. It does 270 damage for 5 energy. And this Pokemon is now asleep. So the obvious synergy for this card is to use Misty's energy, attach 4 energy, end your turn, and then the next turn attach a single energy and be able to attack. You are able to attach a bubbly energy, cure it of its sleep condition, and prevent any future status conditions onto it, and be able to chain to 270. With Whaler being so bulky, it's never really going to get one shot by anything except for the random lightning deck you run into. And it only gives up 2 prizes, which is even better. Another combination you can put in with the falling down is attaching a max belt to Wailord to get you to the magical 320, which is able to one-shot Dragapults and mostly any other Stage 2 EX Pokemon. Another way that you can play Wailord is just being a bulky heal Pokemon. You can do Jumbo Ice Cream Cone, you can do AZ Tranquility, you can do Super Scoop Ups, you can do Scramble Switches. So there's a lot of opportunity for Wailord here. Decks in Japan have been combining this with Monkey Dory. So if they do damage to you, you can just Monkey Dory that damage off the Wailord as pseudo healing, but also setting up KOs. It does been attaching everything with obviously Heavy Baton, as it is a 4 retreat Pokemon. So there are possibilities for Wailord in the format. Washout with Dugong comes into mind, where you can just load up a whole bunch of energy onto a Wailord and then move it around based on your needs. And then also because it is evolving from the Wailmer, I would recommend putting in a baby Hydro Pump Wailord just as a single prize option to get around some of those wall decks. We're talking Sylveon and Crystals. So stuff like that. But for Wailord, to me, Wailord is a 4. Not because it is going to be meta defining, but because if you're going to be making a Wailord deck, you want a 4/4 line of this in the deck. I think it is one of the poster boys for the set. Believe it or not, I think a 380 HP EX Pokemon is something not to ignore, and definitely something you're going to see in the channel once the set releases. Another water type you could pair with Wailord is the Primarina coming from this set. Primarina is a Stage 2 water Pokemon, 150 HP, but has the Max Melody ability. You may use this ability once your turn. When you evolve this Pokemon from your hand, heal all damage to one of your Pokemon. So if your Wailord is taking a whole bunch of damage, you can evolve into a Primarina, heal all that off with no side effect, no discarding of energy, no nothing, and then continue with the Wailord. I think that is what the natural pairing they want us to do with this set. But also, this Primarina could be thrown into a lot of other decks that are bulky stall decks that want to absorb a lot of damage and then get rid of it somehow with the big bulky megas in the format. So with the Primarina, it's really just a 1 in the ratings. You're not really building a deck around this card. This is definitely a support Techmon. But it is a fun little tech that will be able to swing price trades in your favor in order for you to really pull off some of the stally kind of tanky strategies. And then its attack for Aqua Return 120 for Water Colorless, return this Pokemon and all cards attached to your hand, is a way for you to get it out of the bench or even out of the play. That way you don't kind of mess up your prize trading. So like I said, it's a one of in a lot of water decks. It's a one of in any deck that really wants to absorb hits and then find different ways to heal it off. Like I said, they want us to pair it with the Wailord, and obviously it will be, but there's other ways we can pair with it as well. And then the final water type that we're going to talk about today is the Relicanth. Relicanth is a basic water type Pokemon, 100 HP, with the attack Fossil Beatdown for a single colorless energy. It does 10 and then does 30 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon with Antique in its name. So this set is giving us a lot of fossil support and 2 new fossil Pokemon. So with that, plus the 2 fossils that we've had from previous sets, that gives us 5 different fossils that has Antique in its name. And we can do up to 160 before damage modifiers. So obviously, we're thinking here with the Brave Bengal. We could always use the Gladion Supporter. There's other ways to bulk up this, but it is really a single prize attacker where we're going to be streaming our single energy, single prize Relicanths. Some lists in Japan have gone a couple different routes with it. I've seen it where it runs just 4 Relicanth and a whole bunch of recovery for you to just to keep on streaming the Relicanth. I've also seen some of these lists where you kind of splash in other fossil attackers since you're having the fossils on the bench anyway, and then toward the end game, you're attacking with different fossils. So like the Tyrantrum, the Tortuga, the Archeops. So there's some flexibility with this archetype that's actually going to be kind of fun. It does seem clunky because you are filling your board with a whole bunch of basic fossils. You could put in tech evolutions to really just make them into other win conditions as well. To me, the Relicanth by nature has to be a 4 in our rating. You want to have a 4 of in your collection and or in a deck. It's a really fun rogue deck. I don't see it obviously making a lot of impact on the meta. It being a water type doesn't really hit a lot of Pokemon. It hits only the fire types for weakness, and fire isn't necessarily the greatest typing right now. So it's a Pokemon that can be better if the format shifts to more fire types. It is a deck that is very low maintenance. It's a little bit of luck, obviously, but I think the Fossil Beatdown deck is going to be something that you can bring to a League Night or even to a League Challenge and have some fun with it. We've been seeing results in Japan where it did win a event, so there is possibility for it doing well. But like we said, rating is a 4. It's a really good, fun card in the single prize road deck sphere. You're definitely going to see it on the channel for sure. And really don't expect much from it unless the format shifts to a more fire-based format.
Okay, y'all. It's time to talk about the electric Pokemon. But before we get to the Pokemon, let's talk about the special energy card in Pitch Black for Lightning Pokemon, and it's the Voltaic Lightning Energy. I believe that's what the translation is. It was originally Bolty, but I believe it got properly translated to Volcaic. But yeah, let's read what it says. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides a Lightning Energy. And the attacks of the Lightning Energy this card is attached to do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So I think this is actually going to be very powerful to help with the math of the attacks. 20 energy is nothing to scoff at, to be honest. I think it's actually a good number. And then you can also stack. So if you're able to get multiple on there, 20, 40, 60, 80, it all does add up over time. So let's go and talk about the Pokemon themselves. So the first line we have is the Electrike and Baby Manectric in here. So Electrike, that's the basic version, or sorry, basic form. It's 70 HP. It has 2 attacks. For 1 lightning, collect, draw a card. And then for 2 lightning, tackle, which does 30. So nothing spectacular. But it's really just get the evolution to Manectric, which is a 120 HP electric, stage 1 electric Pokemon with 2 attacks. The first one being Flash Barrier, it does 50 damage. And during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's evolution Pokemon. And then the second attack is for Triple Lightning Energy, Sonic Edge, 110 damage. And this attack isn't affected by effects of your opponent's active Pokemon. So essentially this is a nice shred attack. I actually am a little excited for Manectric. The first attack for 2 lightning, prevent all damage done to you by your opponent's evolution Pokemon. We are in a very evolution heavy format right now. Unless you're going against that basic box, you're most likely going to hit some sort of evolution Pokemon. So to be able to prevent damage from that, it's not damage counters, unfortunately. So you can still get hit with Alakazam. But doing 50, it's not bad, and this really pairs well with the Mega Manectric that's out there. I I think playing like one of the Mega just for the beefiness and also for blocking against basic Pokemon can help with the weakness of this card as well. Again, it's not super exciting. I think this is more for a GLC Lightning deck versus Standard. But if y'all can make this in Standard, more power to you. So for now, I will say I will rate this a 1 out of 4. Get one copy of it, especially if you're playing GLC, like the Lightning Pokemon. I think this will be very great. Maybe you can put this in a Mega Manectric deck just as a backup Pokemon, also as a single prize attacker. And it's also Shred, so you can always go into those Sylveons and Crustles if you have to, and give you your electric deck just a little bit more versatility. The next line that we're going to talk about is a partial line, with having the Charge Bug, which is a stage 1, and the Vikavolt, which is a stage 2. So with the Charge Bug, it's 2 attacks, Vice Grip for 30, and Ram for 50. 1 lightning with 2 lightning. That's not what we're here for. We're really here for the Vikavolt. It is 160 stage 2 electric Pokemon, and with the quick dive attack costs 1 lightning energy, and it does 50 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So it's a nice sniping attack there where you can go after some Pokemon that you may be heavily damaged and just needs like a little KO, or maybe go after, say, those pesky Badoos or something with the 50 HP. And then there is the second attack, which goes with the special energy. So for 2 lightning energy, Giga Electromagnetic Blaster for 260 damage. And if this Pokemon doesn't have any Volcanic Lightning Energy attached to it, it does nothing. So we need to play the new special energy with this card. But still, if you're able to get that going, and you have Hilda, you have, of course, Tenacity, you have many ways to get that special energy in play. And doing 260 for 2 Lightning Pokemon on a single prizer, it actually isn't bad. I would say this is actually maybe a viable Lightning deck. But also you can play this in, again, GLC. These single prize cards are really good in GLC. And I play that format, so you're probably going to see me talk about GLC a lot with this set. But I think this is actually a very viable card. However, I'm still going to give it a 1 out of 4. I think there's something missing to make this really more workable. I think the Giga Electromagnetic Blaster is really cool, but are we able to win games with it? I don't know. We can also attach Brave Bangle to up it to 290. We have Max Bell to make 310, but we're still a little short with the knockouts on the EXs, and I don't know if it's going to be worth the prize trade. But hey, if y'all can build a deck and prove me wrong, please do it. And then our next Pokemon we want to talk about is the Mega Zeraora EX. And this, y'all, I'll be honest with y'all, this was very disappointing when I read this card. But let's go through it. It's a Mega Pokemon, so it's going to be worth 3 prizes. Basic, 270 HP. The first attack is Thunder Fist for a single lightning energy. 60 times multiplier, you do 60 damage times the number of lightning energy attached to this Pokemon. So with Dynamotor out there, you can do maybe a decent amount of damage, but I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. And then for triple lightning, we have Zepto Turn, 150 damage, and then you switch this as one of your bench Pokemon. Maybe we can do a nice hit and run strategy here, but 150 damage on a Mega Pokemon with 3 lightning energy, I don't know. I think it's way too much to ask for. It has a retrieve 1, so we have Air Balloon Rescue board for it, but I don't know. I think it has too much against it from this being a good card. I'm gonna rate this a 1 out of 4 at best. Honestly, I probably would maybe lean towards giving this be a 0 out of 4. I don't think there's anything really going for it, at least not right now. Maybe with the Volcanic Lightning can help it, but I don't know. It's not really much for what it is.
Next up are the Psychic type Pokemon. In the first Psychic type, that we want to talk about is the Slowbro coming from the set. Slowbro is a stage 1 psychic type, 130 HP. That's the attack all out for a single psychic energy. It does 50 and then does another 160 if you have 0 cards in hand. Now, in the past, we have seen an all-out deck, Grand Bull, do very well in its format when it was existent. Now, it is a very, very difficult archetype to kind of sequence to make sure that turn over turn, you're able to stream your Slowbros, you're able to stream 0 card hands, and you're able to kind of just take advantage of the single prize trade of doing a lot of damage and making sure your single prizes are on board. With that being said, though, with it being a psychic type, you can pair this with Lily's Clefairy, in that 210 is one-shotting your Dragapults, which is obviously very important in this format. So there is a possibility for that. You can also set up a board state where if you can't get a 0 card hand, you have some alternate attackers that pair with this Slowbro to make sure that you're able to really just advance the game more than just focusing on a Slowbro and a 4/4 line of this. Now, one thing that we really do not want to ignore is this Slowpoke that's coming from this set. Slowpoke is now a 70 HP Pokemon, so we have a 70 HP Slowpoke, which will help with the Dragapult matchup. And then also, early game, it does have the unlimited disposal attack for a single psychic. You may discard as many cards from your hand as you like, so you can just put cards out of your hand and kind of set yourself up for an all-out the next turn. So there's definitely power in that Slowpoke, and then obviously the Slowpoke will go into Slowking decks because it is a 70 HP Slowpoke. In terms of rating for Slowbro, it's a 3. I don't think really in any real deck you're running more than a 3/3 line. I think with the way the all-out archetype is kind of formulated right now, all-out used to be a 4/4 with the Gramble, but this one I think is a 3/3. I think you have more supplementary attackers with this Slowbro because it is a Psychic type, and you have a lot of resources with the Slowbro. So you're able to kind of just not rely on it, but it's your focal point. So to me, this card is a 3. I can see it being a 4. If you really want to go all in on the 4/4 line of Slowbro, it definitely would make sense. But to me, I'm going to be conservative and call it a 3. The next Psychic type Pokemon we want to talk about is Mega Chandelure. Mega Chandelure EX is a Stage 2 Psychic EX Pokemon, 350 HP, that has the Cursed Flame ability. Cursed Flame is where your opponent's active Pokemon retreat cost is 1 colorless more. This can stack depending on how many Mega Chandelures you have in play. And then it does have the Phantom Maze attack for 2 Psychic Energy. It does 130 and then just 50 more for each colorless in your opponent's attack retreat cost. So even with 1 Chandelure in play, with a natural free retreater, it's 180, and then you can always stack onto that with Gravity Stones, with other Mega Chandelures, different things like that. The piece that I definitely do not want anyone to ignore is the Lampent from this set. The Lampent has the attack Returning Lights. Search your deck for up to 3 Lampent and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. So, if you just get 1 Litwick to become a Lampent, you can fill your board with a whole bunch of Lampent without the Litwick. That way you have a quicker way to get to your Chandelures next turn. On top of that, you can still play your Litwicks down and Rare Candy into Chandelures. Both this Mega EX and then also the Twilight Masquerade Chandelure, the fire type that does the Alluring Light with the draw ability just for some extra support. So it's a really good way to get a whole bunch of Chandelures in play using different evolution mechanics. Now, because it is a Psychic type Pokemon, you can obviously use Telepathic Energy to set up your board. You can also go a couple different ways with this Mega Chandelure. You can either go with more of a control style by trying to keep your opponent's active stuck in the active, and then with the Twilight Masquerade Chandelure, kind of force them to draw through their deck using that Alluring Light ability. Or you can go more attacking by setting up a lot of Mega Chandelures, increasing the retreat costs, and just hitting for damage. To me, this Mega Chandelure is a 4. I think it's one of the better cards in the set. I think it's set up itself really well with its Lampent, but also with its attack. It can really just ramp very, very easily. Now, the one thing I do want to say about this deck before we go into like its for sure rating here is that Latias EX with big basics is a auto loss for this deck. Unless you have other attackers that do other things that's not based on the retreat costs, that Latias will make everyone's retreat costs free, and you can't increase that. So that's something to keep in mind when if you are playing this deck. If you run into any Latias based deck, you are not going to be happy. Now, if you run into evolution decks, you're going to love it. You're going to put something in the active doesn't want to be there, and you're definitely going to be there. So, like I said, this card is a 4 of. I think this is you want to get a 4/4/4 of this line from the set if you're buying singles, and you want to try to get as much as possible. And then in the decks, you're running up to 8 total Chandelures with the Twilight Masquerade and Mega. So it's a really, really fun archetype. Now, another card you can throw into a Mega Chandelure deck is this Marshadow. Marshadow is a basic 90 HP psychic Pokemon with the attack Shadow Knot, and it does 30 times the amount of retreat costs in the retreat cost of your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you have 3 Chandelure in play on a free retreater, you're doing 90 for a single energy, which is great, honestly, on an exchange for this. But there's a lot of attackers in the format that are 1 or 2 base retreat costs anyway. So it's not unheard of to see this attack go for 120, 150, or 180 very easily. So this I would throw into a Mega Chandelure 100% of the time. I think it just has natural synergy. And there's been some lists that we see, like I said, the Mega Chandelure Marshadow archetype goes one of 2 ways. Either goes aggressive fighting in terms of damage, and it loses pretty hard to Latios, or it goes control-y, and it really just tries to make your opponent utilize resources and go through the deck a little quicker than they want. So there's that. To me, this Marshadow is a 2 or 3. Because you're not really utilizing it as the main attacker. It's more of a support, kind of, it's a single prize. It helps you get around the wall. It helps kind of set up your prize trading, because your Mega Chandelure is 3 prizes. So if you can just offset that once or twice, you're great. So to me, the Marshadow is a 2 if I go on the rating. Now, I would try to get 3 to 4 in a collection, just because you never know if there's other archetypes going to evolve from this. But in terms of what we're seeing right now, I would call it a 2.
Next up, we're going to talk about Drillbur, which is the pre-evolution to the Mega Excadrill, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This one's actually kind of interesting. So Drillbur is a 70 HP basic fighting Pokemon, so we can get it out with Buddy Poffin. And it has a call for family attack for 1 colorless. And you can search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon, put them on your bench, and shuffle your deck afterwards. So that's not pretty bad for setup, especially in a deck centered around Mega Excadrill. And you'll see how good that card will be when we get to the Metal Pokemon. And then it has a triple colorless attack, Dig Claws 50, but I think this one's actually pretty good. Just for the call for family attack is a Buddy, you can use Buddy Poffin to get it out. You can set up your bench with it. This one's actually pretty good. For what it is, I'm actually gonna rank this higher than what I normally would be. I would say this is gonna be a 2 to 3 out of 4, if not a 4, just because of the evolution to this Pokemon. But even without that, I think you can have some very good deck building with this if you're doing a fighting type deck. Also, this is great for GLC, just because you can set up your board in GLC for a single energy attachment as well. So for what it is, this is higher. So yeah, 2 out of 3, if not a 3 out or 3 of 4 rating for this Drillbur. And last, we're going to talk about the Crydon in this list. Crydon's another basic fighting type Pokemon. Doesn't have the feature, it's just a regular Crydon here. And for 1 fighting energy, It has Battle Claw, 30 plus damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is an evolution Pokemon, you do 30 more damage. So you can do 60, which is okay for a basic attack, especially with something like Koraidon. And then for fighting Colorless, it has Gaia Impact. You do 190, and then you discard all energy attached to this Pokemon. So 190 for a 130 HP Pokemon with no negative effects to HP, which we normally see that. We're just discarding all the energy. But with Terragon and the by Barnacle engine, we can easily get that back up. So it's not that bad and not that big of a deal. I think this will be more of a GLC deck, or if you just need a closer for a single prize fighting type Pokemon in, say, a basic box, I think this will be a good addition to that to those decks. But I won't say this is probably the best card for them. So with that, I would say maybe I guess I'm a little more hype than what I should be, but I'm going to say this is a 2 out of 4. I see some potential for this card, especially in the basic box, lockbox format that we have. And also just GLC, I do play that format time to time as well, so I can see an instant where this will be good in that deck too. But yeah, that's our fighting Pokemon.
And next up, going to be the Darkness type Pokemon. So the first Pokemon we're going to talk about today is the poster boy of the set, and that is Mega Darkrai EX. Mega Darkrai EX is a basic EX, Mega EX Pokemon with 280 HP, gives up 3 prizes when KO'd, but it has 2 very interesting attacks. The first one is for 2 Darkness Energy, Duskarade, it does 110, and if any of your bench Pokemon have any damage counters on them, it does 110 more. So that's 2 energy for 220, which is not a bad return. And as Darkrai is a Darkness Pokemon, it needs Pokemon on your bench to be damaged. The most obvious combination with this is going to be the Toxtricity engine. And then it has a second attack, Abyss Eye, is for 3 Darkness Energy. If your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by a special condition, it is knocked out. So this can get powered very quickly, again, with that Toxtricity engine. And it also can get KOs as long as you're able to apply a special condition to the active. Now, this pairs up very nicely with the new item card Dusk Bell, which confuses both active Pokemon unless either Pokemon are Darkness type. So that helps with the synergy of Darkrai EX. It's a combination they're naturally wanting us to do. But when you're looking at Mega Darkrai, a lot of comparisons to Mega Absol come into play. Again, they're both Mega basic Darkness Pokemon with one attack that does damage for 2 energy, and then another attack that does an instant KO based on a mechanical KO situation. So, is Mega Darkrai going to rival even this usage of Mega Absol or be kind of on the same plane? I'm going to venture to say no. I think Mega Darkrai fits a very different role than Mega Absol does, because Mega Absol still has a little bit of a disruption control mechanic with its damaging attack. Where Mega Darkrai is either a pure damage or a conditional KO type of situation. Now, with that being said, I don't think Mega Darkrai is bad by any means. I think you have to have the right engine to work around it. And I think Darkness does have that with the Toxtricity engine, and also with some status condition tools, like we said, with Duskbell and other ways to kind of getting different types of conditions onto the your opponent's active Pokemon. With that being said, I think Mega Darkrai is a 3 rated card for us. In any given deck, you're really not going to run more than 3 just because it does give up 3 prizes, so there's no need to run more. It does need to kind of rely on a very strong supporting cast in order for it to truthfully get up and running. But by no means is this a bad deck. There's some lists out there from Japan that show it being partnered up with some other cards, like we said, the Toxicity Engine, with Monkey Dory, and then also with Petrarunt EX. So there's that kind of play and kind of idea of what people have been doing with Mega Darkrai over in Japan. Now, the next card we want to talk about for the Darkness type is Thwevel. Thwevel is a Stage 1 Darkness Pokemon of 100 HP. It has the attack Skill Thief for 2 colorless energy. If you have no cards in hand, choose one of your opponent's attacks and then use it as this attack. This Pokemon can be used in a all-out archetype as a secondary attacker. I don't think really you need it in an all-out attacking kind of deck. I think with Slowbro being a Psychic type and just kind of having some Psychic synergies, that alone is good enough. You don't need the Thwevel. But if you think adding another attacker where you don't have to rely on the 210 for Slowbro, but you can do some other things like copying Dragapult, copying Mega Starmie, copying Mega Zygarde's attack, different things like that based on the matchup. You can probably run a 1-1 line of this in your deck. You probably wouldn't get punished too much, but I don't really see this really being a part of the all-out archetype. With that being said, I think this card is a 2 in terms of the ratings. I think it has a very high ceiling and a very low floor. The gap is just so large. It doesn't really have a for sure home just yet. I think it does have potential, and I would put a 2-2 line in my binder just so I have it, just in case you want to modify the all-out archetype in the future. It's definitely a card that could do more, but right now just isn't doing enough. Another Darkness type Pokemon we want to talk about is Zarude. Zarude is a basic Darkness type Pokemon, 130 HP with 2 attacks. The first one for a single Darkness Energy is Overhead Throw. It does 32 active and then 30 to one of your opponents, or to one of your bench Pokemon. Sorry. So with that being said, that's another way you can get Mega Darkrai EX on board. Is you can lead with a Zarude, do damage to yourself, get a Darkrai powered up in the back, and then you can keep that damage there. Also, keep in mind, as you see, it is 30 damage, so you can also pair that with a Monkey Dory engine, and just kind of put some damage on your side before your opponent can really do anything, and then you can just push that damage over to your opponent's side using a Monkey Dory engine. So it's definitely a card that could be used. And then the second attack is Shadow Whip for 3 Darkness Energy. It does 100 damage, and if any of your bench Pokemon have any Shadowy Darkness Energy attached, it does 70 more damage. So for Zarude, I really think it is a 2. I think this is a tech attacker in any deck. You really are playing with it. It is a good Pokemon that can set up numbers and set up your board state for certain conditions, which is great. So it'll be a card that I think is going to be always a good 1 to 2 of in every single Darkness deck it kind of runs. Even without the Shadowy Darkness Energy, I think it just does what it needs to do in the right typing. Now, speaking of Shadowy Darkness Energy is a special energy that got released in this set. And what it is, it provides a Darkness Energy. And if a Darkness type Pokemon this card is attached to, it prevents all damage to bench Dark Pokemon. So, with the Overhead Throw, you could actually target a Pokemon that had a Shadowy Darkness Energy and do 0 damage. But I think the pros of having the damage on your board for Overhead Throw outweighs using that protection combo with Shadowy Darkness. But giving a random Darkness Pokemon on your bench barrier is really, really good. The Shadowy Darkness Energy does protect against Mega Starmie, Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, and Zeraora as examples. So it's really good to have that damage protection. Now, it does not protect against Dragapult. It does not protect against any damage counter attacks. So, like we're going to see in the Hide and Sneak archetype. So something to keep in mind, damage versus damage counters in this case. But for Shadowy Darkness, I really think that if you're running a Darkness deck, this is a 4 rating. I think this is a really good energy to have. It does not get accelerated with the Toxtricity engine, but it's something that you can use as your manual attachment for turn and really set up and protect certain assets on your bench. That way, they just don't get sniped in the early to mid game. So, like I said, this is definitely a rating of a 4 for the set. I think this is one of the better special energies out there. And if you're a darkness deck, you definitely aren't going to be playing this. And then last card we're going to talk about is Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu is a basic darkness Pokemon with 90 HP. And it has the Spiraling Envy attack. It does 20 base damage, and if this Pokemon has 2 or more damage counters on it, it does 90 more. This attack does not apply weakness nor does not apply only weakness. It is resistance based, but it's not weakness based. So, but honestly, 110 for 1 energy if it has damage counters on it is really, really good. It's a really good card that you can throw in like I said, I'm using this, but it's darkness, so the Toxtricity engine, really good because it automatically puts damage counters on it. That's 2, so it hits the minimum. And just having this as a one of in any darkness attacking deck, that especially if it runs the Toxtricity engine, is perfect. There's lists out there that I see it as a 1 or 2 of in Mega Darkrai, because as again with Mega Darkrai giving 3 prizes, you want to offset that prize trade with some single prizers. I think Chi-Yu is one of the better single prizers for the Darkness archetype. So it's a really good Pokemon, really good card. I'm going to give this a 2 rating. I think this is something that you want at least 2 of in your binder. You're probably not going to run any more than 2 of in a deck. It just has a very, very low damage ceiling, but it does what you need to do with the right engine. And you're able to set up numbers, if not straight up, just get kind of early game pressure KOs with that.
Next is actually a typing I'm a little excited about. If y'all know me, I do love my metal type Pokemon. So we're going to talk about some of the new metal Pokemon in here. First of all, we're going to start with Skarmory. So not Mega Skarmory, this is regular baby Skarmory. With 120 HP, has a single retreat energy cost, and for 1 steel or 1 metal energy, we have Steel Cutter attack 40 times multiplier. Discard up to 2 metal energy from your hand. This does 40 times number of metal energy you discard in this way. So we're only doing a max of 80 damage. So not bad for a single energy cost, but it could be better. Skarmory doesn't really get a lot of love in general, so this isn't really that good. I can see maybe a one of in say a metal GLC just to kind of snipe out some early game pressure. But after that, this card wouldn't be good in GLC. So with that, I'll say this is maybe a 1. Yeah, 1 out of 4. I can see that Skarmory will get maybe a special illustration rare. They've done that to Skarmory before, so with that, maybe if you're on the collector side, if they do decide to go that route, that will be a little higher of a ranking for me. But for now, not knowing what the special illustration rares, because I'll be honest, I don't really follow that side of the game, I'll give this a 1 out of 4. It's not too impressive. It's very niche. 80 damage isn't the best unless you're hitting for weakness, and even then, like into like Clefairy, you're not knocking that out unless you have a multiplier like Brave Bengal attached to it. So I would say, yeah, 1 out of 4 for me. Next, we're going to talk about the Bronzor Bronzine line. So Bronzor, it's a basic metal Pokemon, 80 HP, so that's important. You cannot get it with Buddy Poffin, you only can get it with Pokepad. And it has 1 attack, mirror attack, 10 plus damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a metal Pokemon, you can do 30 more, so 40. But again, it is just a basic. It is a Bronzor. It's not going to do anything special. Next, the evolution is the Bronzong with 130 HP with 3 retreat costs. It has 2 attacks with this. Gentle Slap for a single metal energy for 40 damage, so not too bad. And then for Metal Colorless, it has a Metal Block. It does 120 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 100 less damage from attacks from your opponent's evolution Pokemon. So it seems like this attack blocks it from all evolution Pokemon from your opponent's side. The only way that they can get around that if they boss this out of the active spot and gets rid of that. So really, I would say 100 minus 100 is pretty big. It's actually not that bad. Plus, you have the Iron Defender card, which will be minus 30, plus the Full Metal Lab, which is another minus 30. So you could block up to minus 160 damage in one turn using this attack. This is actually pretty interesting. Um, Again, I think one shots are too prevalent for this to really matter. There's way too many ways around it. But at the same time, like if you think about a card like Dragapult right now, that is the deck to beat in this format, it does 200 damage. You're with all that in play, you're doing minus 160, so they're only doing 40 damage to you, and so they're not knocking you out. So this is actually, I'm on the fence with this card. I think this can be pretty good, but it's a lot of setup, a lot of blocking, a lot of healing, and which you can heal too. You can play Jumbo Ice Cream if you do get up there, but I'll say I'm going to give this a 2 out of 4. There's a lot of potential with Bronzong, but it being a single prize, I think it's too easy to play around with. Boss is too prevalent in this format. Plus, I'm not sure if the math actually will matter at the end of the day. But we can see, we'll see people trying to break this. I think this will be maybe good in GLC, but there's too many other good Bronzongs in GLC, like Metal Links, Metal Transfer, Heat Proof. So we'll see. I may fool around with this card, see if I can make a deck around it. But until then, this is going to be a 2 out of 4. There's a lot of potential with this card. And then last for the metal Pokemon outside of a certain archetype that I'll talk about in a little bit is the Mega X Drill EX, coming from that Drillbur we just previously talked about. So it's a Mega Pokemon, so worth 3 prizes, 340 HP. Has a hefty 4 retreat cost, so we're not retreating this thing unless we have a the magnet metal energy attached to it, which is fine. There's other ways to really get around switching this out. But for it's actually a pretty decent card for 2. It has 2 attacks for 2 metal energy, has dig and break for 90 damage, and you discard the top 2 cards from your opponent's deck. So a little bit of milling action there. It's not too bad. I would say if this could be like a late game closer if they're really low in their deck, or if you know that certain resources, we can try to get those resources out of their hand or out of their deck to not use for the rest of the game. And then for 3 metal energy, it has maximum drill, 200 plus damage, and if you have at least 2 extra energy attached to it, in addition to the 3 energy cost, so for a total of 5 energy, you can do 130 more damage. So you can do 330, knock out those Dragapults, and you're not discarding those energies. They stay on there. So as long as you have 5 energy, you can one-shot Dragapults so easily, and they're not one-shotting you back. So I'm very hyped on this card. I think this is a very good for metal decks out there right now. This will be its own archetype. I don't see this being paired with the current Metal Maker box that we have. I feel like we have to build a deck around this. You will use Metal Maker or even Steven's Metagross as the main energy acceleration to this. But I think this is a pretty good card. I'm really hype on this. I'm going to give this actually a 4. A little biased because I am a metal person. That is my specialty, my love outside of the poison. And yeah, I'm excited to build this deck. I know I've already talked to a couple of my friends. We're going to try to spearhead a nice Mega Extra deck for this channel. And I'm excited to really do that once we have some ideas really put in place for this deck. But I'm excited. This is going to be a fun card. This is one of the premier archetypes coming out. We are going to talk about a couple archetypes throughout this video, but this is going to be one of the big ones. So be on the lookout for a video with Mega X-Drill. And really, at time of recording, I looked through the Indonesian Master Ball lists that got top 32, and this was one of the decks. So there is potential. There's already proof of concept. So I'm just excited to see how this deck really plays in this format. But yeah, that's all the metal Pokemon.
And the last type we're going to talk about today for the set review is the Colorless type. Now, Colorless really only has two main Pokemon coming from this, but they have really good value and can bring a lot of flexibility to the format. The first one we're going to talk about is the Toucannon. Toucannon is a Stage 2 Colorless Pokemon of 150 HP. It has the ability Sky Draw. So Sky Draw is once during your turn, you may draw a card. That is super powerful. You can partner that up as a draw engine in so many different decks. The two that I've seen in Japan is partnering up with Alakazam. Alakazam draws a lot of cards naturally, but also having a way of constant card draw with the Sky Draw kind of helps protect Alakazam from being red carded or Cirrhosic or unfair stamped, and kind of gives it a more stronger long-term engine. And then it also has a attack for a single colorless energy, Feather Rando. It is 60, and there's 20 more for each bench Pokemon that plays both yours and your opponent. So with Alakazam already having a naturally large bench size, that kind of helps put straight damage onto the board if they have ways to kind of go around Alakazam's placement of damage counters. So we're talking like the matchup versus Team Rockets with the Team Rocket Articuno. It also can give you a more consistent damage cap in cases like with Alakazam gets their hands disrupted and they're not able to recover as quickly. Toucannon can definitely just give straight damage and give more pressure damage than what the Alakazam could do after a disruption turn. Another package that this Toucannon could fit in is a Terra package with a Terra Pokemon, Area Zero Underdefs, Noctowl, and then obviously and then Glass Trumpet. So you could have a Terra in play, Grass Trumpet onto your Toucannon, and then you be up and running in terms of doing damage. And with the Area Zero Underdefs having an expanded bench, you'll be able to do more damage than a normal bench size there. So that is a package that I can see. I've seen one list that really is trying to utilize that. It doesn't really do it to the fullest extent, but it'll be something that'll be interesting of other people kind of experiment with the Toucannon. Now, in terms of ratings, this card is it is a slam dunk 4. This is something where you want to get a 4-4-4 line from this set. You want to have it in your binder. If you are going to be utilizing Toucannon, you want to have as many of them as possible. Just a straight draw one every single turn is something that you cannot overlook. And it being a colorless type and having that Feather Rondo attack. This attack is Palkia V-Star, but it is on a stage 2. It's a little weaker, but it does exactly what you need it to do. This card is very well rounded. It can go into any single deck, really. And it's something that I would not be surprised if this becomes the new engine of the format. And then the last colors Pokemon we're going to talk about, we kind of addressed it a little bit, is the Silvally. The Silvally is a stage 1 colors Pokemon, 140 HP, with Call a Buddy ability. Once you're in a turn, you may use this ability. If you have 0 cards in hand, search your deck for a supporter, review it, put it in your hand. So this is another piece to the general all-out archetype that they're really trying to get us to use. 0 card hand, grab supporter. This really is you search for supplies, you search for non-draw based supporters. You're going to be using those different types of supporters. They may not utilize in a normal deck build. We're talking about the Black Belt Training. We're talking about the Gladian's Decisive Battle. We're talking about energy disruption or hand disruption supporters, where you can still maintain that 0 card hand and still get a benefit to the board. It does have attack for 130, Air Slash, 3 colors energy, and you have to discard an energy to this Pokemon. This is perfect ignition energy attacker in that all-out deck. Kind of fulfills a very similar role than the Slow Bro does, where it has a secondary kind of attack or secondary effect with that is triple energy reliant or ignition energy reliant. So it definitely has that capability. To me, this card is a 3. I think you need to have 3 of these in your binder. If you're running this as a support mon in an all-out deck, I think you're running a 2-2 or 3-3 line of this, just because you kind of do need to have at least one on the bench. You don't want to go super thick with it, but you definitely don't want to go too thin. That way you don't lose out on the opportunity of having it, because it could be what your supporter engine in the deck that allows you to get your damage modifiers through the supporter lines. So with that being said, that is all the Pokemon.
Okay, y'all. Now we're talking about the trainers in this in this set here. There's a couple I won't talk about because I'm going to talk about those with a fossil deck right after trainers, because I'm actually really hype on fossils. But before we get there, let's talk about the Dark Bell. This is a new item card, and it just reads both active Pokemon except dark Pokemon are confused, and you may play this as many times as you want. Obviously, you won't play more than one a turn. There's no point of using more than one a turn, but this goes really well with that new Darkrai EX, which is the poster child of this set. As we recall, there is the Abyss Eye attack where you automatically get knocked out. It has a special condition. This is a very easy special condition for the Darkrai to use. We just play an item. Again, there's other ways for Darkrai to use the second attack, but the Dark Bell is really good, especially if you're playing a dark Pokemon deck. You just have to be mindful that if you go against an opponent's dark Pokemon, it won't work. So it won't work on Pheasantipity. That's the main darkness Pokemon we're seeing in a lot of decks. But if they have other typings, this will be great, and you can utilize this with the Mega Darkrai. Next is going to be Heroic Bomb. This one is a little interesting because face value, this looks good. So let me just read the card real quick. So it reads, by the way, it's a tool card. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is not a Mega Pokemon EX and takes 240 or more damage from your opponent's active Mega Pokemon EX, place 12 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon and then discard this card. Again, that sounds really good. Like, you put this on even just a regular EX, and if they attack you, do 240 more damage, you can just do 12 damage back to them with no really cost to you, and then that can set up some attacks. The bad side of this card is if you look at a lot of the main Mega Pokemon right now, they're not doing 240 damage. So Mega Lopunny is only doing 230 damage. Mega Venusaur, but they can play around that by using other Pokemon in their list. What else is I guess Mega Extriel can do that, but they'll just play around that and just do 200 damage to you. It's just with the Megas out there, the only one that really will be impactful is Mega Kingsgon, because you have to do the coin flip. So if they get 1 heads, then they get 12 damage counters on them. But for the most part, this isn't really going to be seeing a lot of play or a lot of usage, because it won't ever take effect. You can try it, but it depends on the Mega Evolution you're going against. It may not even be worth it. Maybe a one-of for those pesky grass decks because of Mega Venusaur if they are attacking with it. But again, they can play around that. They'll have the Tilmas to play with. If they're running Arvoliva, they have that. If they have a Hydrapple, they'll have that. So there's ways around Heroic Bomb. And again, like from the new Mega Extriel that we just talked about, they can do 200 to you and not have the 2 extra energy. So as much as this reads really great, in practicality, it's not. So I will give this a 1 out of 4 from my rating. It sounds cool. You can't really use this in any other formats, but maybe eventually this will have some potential as we get more Mega Evolution and their attacks start to kind of creep up to 240. But as of right now, I'll say this is a 1, if not a 0, because I just don't see this ever even triggering. Next, we'll have the retry badge. I don't know what the official name of this will be in English. I have not seen any of those cards yet, and I'm sure there are proper translations out right now. I just haven't done the research. I'll be honest with y'all. I know it's not called retry badge, but let's talk about it so we are familiar once we actually do see the English translation. And once you're in turn, after you flip any coins for an attack on the colorless Pokemon this card is attached to, you may ignore the results and flip again. So this reminds me of Glimwood Tangle, the stadium card from way back, no, not that far back in the day, but from Sword and Shield, where we're able to redo the coin flips. And there's a lot of cards that have coin flips for attacks. So we have the Mega Kingsgon, so we can reflip on that. And it's important. This is colorless Pokemon, so that's only good really for Mega Kingsgon. I'm sure there was some other cards I just can't think of right now. I'm trying to think. Oh, for the Bombardier. That's right. We just talked about that card. Flip 2 coins of heads. At both our heads, you can search for a Pokemon. So it's good for that as well. So they're playing into the Bombardier card as well with this card. But again, I think reflipping coins is really good. But at the same time, it's so limited in the use. That's why I like Glimwood Tangle. It had a lot more nuances that we can use it for. Versus this is really, it's a tool card and you can only use it in colorless decks. So with that, I'm going to give that a 1 out of 4. I think it will be good with Mega Kingsgon, and that's pretty much it right now. But again, they could be planning out future cards that we don't know about. So let's keep an eye out, and this may become a better card in the future. But for now, in this format with Pitch Black, this is a 1 out of 4. And now we're going to go into some supporters, which honestly, I like the supporters in this set. They're pretty good. So first off, we're going to start with Misty's Energy. This reads, search your deck for up to 4 basic water energy and attach them to one your Pokemon, and then shuffle your deck, but your turn ends, which is fine. Obviously, the big Pokemon that we think of right away in this set is the new Wailord EX. That thing is tanky. You can put the energy on there and not worry about it getting knocked out unless you're going against a lightning type deck, which we're not really seeing right now. But there's also some other Pokemon you can attach this to. You can put this on the Titan EX that came out a little bit ago, where it has the ability where it can't get bossed from the bench because it prevents effects of supporters while it's on the bench. So you can set up this Titan and hit big with that finally. This actually may be the card that was missing to make that deck pretty good. You also put this with a Kingdra EX. There was that Kingdra EX deck a while ago. It got nerfed with rotation, but I think Misty's Energy will help make it better. Again, not the best option. I think the Wailord EX is the most ideal situation, most ideal card for Misty's Energy. But in early game, we have where we know we're not going to get set up, and you need a lot of water energy to attack. This is a great opening card where you know you won't get rid of your active, or even you know that they won't boss up your bench. So with that, I'm going to give this a 2 out of 4, maybe even a 3. I'm probably more hyped than what I should be on this card, but I see a lot of potential with this. But it is also very limited. It's water Pokemon only, your turn ends, but you just have to find the right partner for it to make sense. Next is going to be Gladion's Decisive Battle, which this one is actually a very good card when you read it. You may only play this card if it's the only card in your hand, so it pairs well with the all-out deck with the new Slowbro and the type Null that we talked about previously. And you can, during your turn, attacks used by Pokemon that do not have a rule box, deal 80 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is actually really good. You can one-shot a lot of those pesky, just really threats, doing 80 more damage. And again, this is good for non-rule box Pokemon. So pair this with Brave Bengal, do Gladions, and you can do a lot of damage. So let's do a quick case study with the new Slowbro that we've just talked about. All out because again we need to only use it when it's the last card in our hand. So with the slow, bro. So we do all out 50, so 160. So you're doing 210 plus Gladion is plus 90 or plus 80, so you're doing 290. If you have a Brave Bengal, we add 30 more to that. That's 320 damage. You're one-shotting Dragapult with that. And honestly, you don't with all out, you probably won't need Gladion because you can hit for weakness with Clefairy. But if the Lily's Clefairy is somehow prized, you have a way to one-shot Dragapult with the all-out deck. With playing the Gladion, yes, it is going to be your supporter for a turn, but it's just a really great way to really buff up single prize cards. But you have to find a way to get it all out of your hand. So with that, I'm going to be a little high on this. I'm going to give this a solid 3. I think this will also be great in GLC because it's nothing but non-rule box Pokemon in that format as well. And 80 damage is very good. You can really knock out, say, the Wailord in GLC with this card and find ways other than having damage modifiers. So yeah, I'm going to give this a solid 3 out of 4. This one isn't going to be an aura rating. I think it is a solid 3 in my opinion. Next, we're going to do Rust Syndicate Grunt. This reads, you may only play this card if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, so pretty easy. And you discard one energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. So this is going to be a control player's dream here, because you're always going to get knocked out. It is great to just get rid of pesky energies. If your opponent's playing Neo Upper, get that Neo Upper out of play. They can never get it back. Get the Legacy energy out of play. Or even if you're doing a deck where you don't want Mist Energy or Rocky Fighting, you get rid of those special energies that are going to be annoying to your control style deck. And just in general, getting rid of one energy, pair this off with Crushing Hammer and Enhanced Hammer. This actually is a very decent card. Again, you have to get knocked out, and you're just discarding one card, and that's going to be your supporter for turn. With the amount of energy denial we have out there that are not supporters, I want to give this I want to say a 1 out of 4. But if you're a control lover, I will say 2 out of 4. I think this is pretty decent for what the supporter is, but we have item cards that do the same thing. So with that, this is going to be a little lower, but I think this is still a really cool, interesting card. And I'm interested to see how I can play around with this. I have an idea for a deck that I'm making for League. That won't be on the channel because this is going to be an expanded deck that I'm fooling around with. But we'll see how Rust Syndicate Grunt deals with everyone. Next is our last supporter, which is Gwyn. We'll probably talk about this when we talk about Ghost Veil or Hide and Sneak decks, but this is really good outside of that as well. Discard up to 2 Pokemon from your hand, excluding any rule box Pokemon. Draw 3 cards for each Pokemon you discard in this way. So discard 2 Pokemon, draw 6 cards. This is really good. You can see through your deck a lot. There's a lot of Pokemon recovery nowadays, so losing those Pokemon isn't as big of a deal. You can actually ditch Pokemon you want to save for later and use Lana's aid to get them back into play. But yeah, I think this is a really great draw support, and it does go well with Hide and Sneak. There's no denying that. We probably talked about that when we talked with that deck. But in general, I say this is actually a really strong card. This is going to be a 4 out of 4 for me. I would say buy 4 copies of this, keep them, find a way to put them in your non-rule box deck, because you can, with the amount of Pokemon recovery we have with Night Stretcher, Lana's Aid, losing those Pokemon isn't a big deal. We can get those back, and you can draw a lot with this.
So the new archetype that they really want us to build and put together for this set is the Hide and Sneak archetype. So we're going to go over all the hide and sneak cards and kind of go in terms and talk about the roles. And then we'll go and look over some lists that they're doing in Japan to give us an idea of what is working, what the foundation is. So hide and sneak is an ability that's on several Pokemon in this set. It's on a Poltergeist, it's on a Sinistra, it's on a Shuppet, and it's on a Bayonet. So that gives us up to 16 hide and sneakers in this deck. And hide and sneak is an ability that says this Pokemon can't be affected by effects of attacks or abilities from your opponent's Pokemon. So it can't get damage countered or having damage counters be placed on it from Dragapult, from Monkey Dory, from Dusknoirs, all those type of things. So it is protected while it's on the bench, except for direct damage. But each one of them have their own separate attack, which kind of utilizes different aspects of what they are. So for the Poltergeist, it has an attack, Furtive Drop. Place one damage counters on place one damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. The Shinista has an attack for a single color, Matcha Spin. If you have 6 or more Pokemon in your discard pile with the hide and sneak ability, place 4 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So this is where that hide and sneak ability really matters. It is a deck archetype that wants you to have these hide and sneakers in your discard pile. And depending on how many are in your discard pile, different Pokemon's attacks can get turned on. So the Sinistra is a good mid to late game attacker where you can just start placing damage counters and cleaning up KOs, or even setting up KOs if you have enough of them early game. So that's the Sinistra line. Now the other set of hide and sneakers is the Shuppet Bayonet line. And Shuppet is a single psychic energy, hang down, just does 10 damage. But the Bayonet has the puppet pull. Bayonet has the puppet pull attack for a single color, so does 80 damage. You may search your deck for any card and put it in your hand, shuffle your deck afterwards. So what you can do is start putting pressure on early game with Bayonet. Start dumping your hide and sneakers, the other ones. So any other Bayonet, if you only want to put like 1 or 2 in play, get your Poltergeist and Sinistra into the graveyard, and that way you can turn on other attackers. So the other attackers outside of these 16 cards that will help set up your deck. The first one is going to be Delmise. Delmise is a psychic type, 140 HP basic Pokemon that has the attack for a single psychic energy, Vengeful Anchor. It has 30 base damage, and if you have 4 or more Pokemon in your discard pile with a hide and sneak ability, it does 140 damage. So 171 energy is really easy to do. There's plenty of discarding cards in the format to get those hide and sneakers into your discard pile. We're talking Ultra Ball, we're talking Prism Tower, we're talking the new supporter Gwen. So we have a whole bunch of different ways of just getting Pokemon into the discard pile naturally outside of just being KO'd. So Delmise is going to be the main attacker once you get just 4 in the discard pile is not a hard lift to do early game. Like I said, we're running up to 16 of them in a deck, so we're definitely going to get that 4 in there. Another hide and sneak attacking Pokemon is the Spiritomb. Spiritomb is a basic psychic type Pokemon, 60 HP with the Soul End attack. If you have 13 or more Pokemon with hide and sneak in your discard pile, choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon and quadruple the number of damage counters on them. This is a very much a high risk endgame finisher, because having 13 out of 16 is a very high number, even in this type of archetype. Like, having 13 Night Marchers back in the day was still really hard to pull off in the late game and still be able to have a manageable board state. So, you really don't see Spiritomb in a lot of lists. I think Spiritomb is more of a high roll situation where you have to have enough damage that wasn't KO'able onto your board, or you really are leaning into the Matcha Spin attack a couple turns and really just setting up KOs that way. But with that being said, this archetype is a fantastic single price archetype. It definitely kind of solves some of the problems that players have been asking for with just a general metagame, where there's a single prize deck that can protect itself against Dragapult, that can swing and keep up with prize trades, has early game pressure, and has single prize low energy attacks. I think this deck definitely kind of checks all the boxes of what players wanted from a new archetype coming into the metagame, and definitely is something that is going to be a look at for Worlds. I don't think it is the answer for Worlds, but I think it's definitely a look at for Worlds. And then on screen here, we have a deck list where the general strategy right now is running a Delmai's attacking strategy. We're not really looking at the Spirit Tomb. And we're not running 16 hide and sneakers. We're running 10. But if the whole strategy is just getting Delmai's up and running, I think that it's more than capable. And then you're running a Lily's Clefairies, that way the Delmai's can one hit KO at Dragapult. And then you're running Gwen and a couple other discarding cards to really get that up and running early game pressure kind of situation. So there's hide and sneak. This is a very, very good single prize archetype. I think this is the archetype coming out of this set, and everyone is going to be able to get this. And it's going to be very easy to kind of put together. Most of these cards, in terms of the base structure and the skeleton of this, are uncommons or under. Even the Delmise is uncommon, so if you open up enough packs, you'll be able to get a 4/4 line of every single hide and sneaker, and you're going to get 4 Delmise very quickly. So this is a really good deck. I highly encourage everyone to look out for this and play with it, and not when you're building decks, build your decks around the concept. This is going to be something you're going to see quite frequently. I'm excited to play it on the ladder once the set drops, and I hope you are too. And then let's go over to the next archetype that we're excited for on this set list. That way you can kind of see another set of cards that are going to be impactful on the ladder.
Okay, y'all. I'm actually excited to talk about this archetype here. We did not include these in the Pokemon categories themselves because this is a new archetype coming out of this set alone. I think it just deserves its own section here, and we're going to talk about the new fossil deck. So there's 2 new fossils coming out in this set with Rampardos EX in the Bastiodon. So let's go through the Pokemon first, then we'll go through what makes it all together, and I'll give my thoughts on this. Spoiler alert, I'm actually kind of hype on this. Again, I think I'm coming in with a realistic expectation, but I think this will be a fun deck to play, and just maybe a challenge. I'm not sure how it's going to be at anything higher than that, but let's go through the cards real quick. So the first key piece is the Rampardos EX, falls from the Cranidos. This is a Stage 2 Pokemon, Fighting type, 330 HP, and has the ability Destructive Headbutt. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon's in the active spot, you may flip a coin. If heads, discard 1 energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So that's really good. You can get the energy off, prevent them from attacking, and then for 2 fighting energy, you do Rampaging Hammer, 150 damage, and during your next turn, attacks used by this Pokemon do 150 more damage. So if you can survive a hit, you do 300 damage the next turn, and that will knock out anything in play. And this pairs really well with the new Bastiodon, which is a metal type Pokemon. Evolves from the Sheldon. So 160 HP and has the Ancient Bulwark ability. When this Pokemon is on the bench, prevent all damage done to your Pokemon by attacks of Pokemon that have 2 or fewer energy attached. So this is actually very strong into decks like Dragapult, as long as this Pokemon stays on the bench, because they can't attack you. You force them to play extra energy to be able to attack, and then with Rampardos, you have the opportunity to discard that extra energy and kind of put them behind. I think this is a really good Dragapult counter. Again, there's other decks out there that just needs 2 energy or even 1 energy to attack, and you just prevent damage that way. The weakness of this deck is that if you only have 1 in play, they boss it up, it turns off the ability, and then the Dragapult player can do what they will. But yeah, I think this is a really good combo. But y'all may be asking, well, fossils are really hard to set up. How are you finding these fossils? And that goes with the new stadium card in this set, the Fossil Excavation Site. Once during your turn, that player may search their deck for up to 2 trading cards with the word antique in their name and just put them onto your bench and then you shuffle. So you can get the Fossil Excavation Site in play, get 2 of either the Antique Skull Fossil or Antique Shield Fossil, put them in play, and just really get going. And let's actually talk about these fossils. Again, you're really only using them to evolve into your Pokemon, but the Antique Skull Fossil is for the Cranidos, which goes into Rapardos, and you play this as a 60 HP colorless Pokemon. Can't be affected by any special conditions, and you can't retreat. It has a Spiky Skull ability. If this Pokemon is in the active spot and takes damage from attacks by your opponent's Pokemon, you put 3 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. So if it does get hit, at least you can do some chip damage to it, help set up some other plays. And then we have the Shield Fossil, which is for the Sheldon, which goes to Bastiodon. The first part of the text is the same, can't do special conditions, can't retreat. We may discard from play anytime. It has the Armor Protection ability. When this Pokemon is in the active spot, all your Pokemon take 10 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So again, it serves a little bit of purpose, but it's really there just to get the fossils going. So if you have a good draw, use the excavations. I get 2, maybe get 2 more, even 1 more. And this really pairs kind of well in the beginning game with the new Relicanth, where you do extra damage for each antique Pokemon on the bench. So it's a great setup deck. Again, there's a lot of weaknesses with this fossil deck, but this is going to be fun. I'm excited to actually try to build this and put this on our channel, so stay tuned for this type of deck. Overall, I will say this is probably a 2 out of 4. It is going to be a fun rogue deck, don't get me wrong. Am I going to take this to a cup or something above that? Probably not. Maybe a challenge. But this will just be something I'll probably bring to my Rogue Night once this set comes out, or just for fun in general. It does seem like a good concept, and it does block against a lot of those pesky Dragapults out there. Blocks against Clefairy, it blocks against, I'm trying to think of any other decks that use 2 or fewer energy. But those are the main decks that will block right now. So, yeah, 2 out of 4 for these cards. I will say if you want a fun rogue deck, this definitely build this. If not, I will stay away from it. But I'm kind of hype on this deck. Okay, y'all, that was the Pitch Black set review. Overall, I'm not really too impressed with this set, but there are a couple shiny moments as well. We have that new Hide and Sneak deck that is doing really great right now in the format. It's, I guess, arguably the Dragapult counter deck, but it does seem fun. The concept of that is really good. I'm hype on Mega Excadrill and also on the Fossil deck. I think those are going to be fun alternate decks to play. But with that, let us know what you thought about this video idea that we have. Comment below. We always reply to our comments when we can. And also like, subscribe to our channel. Let us know your thoughts on different archetypes that you see coming from this set that you want us to try out. We're always looking for new ideas. And during the summertime, we can get a little busy. So having your all suggestions really do help us. But with all that being said, thank you for watching with our Pitch Black set review video. And as always, y'all, have fun playing those sneaky decks. See you guys.